Hello, hello. Welcome to the Make Life Your Bitch podcast. Before we kick things off of the human design series, I just couldn't wait anymore and I had to start releasing the episodes. But first off, the person on the podcast today is Katie Carlson. And the reason I wanted to do this episode is because I want you to see how amazing Katie Carlson is when she talks to you about human design when it comes to business. Katie Carlson is my secret weapon who is going to be joining me in the Wealthy Rebel program. So what that means is that when you join us in the Wealthy Rebel program, she is actually going to help you with your messaging so that it is in alignment with the program and the way you are actually marketing your business, which is really exciting. So without further ado, I am so glad you're going to tune in to this very first episode, and I can't wait for you to give me your feedback about how excited you are about the Human Design series. So welcome and take a listen. Welcome to the Make Life Your Bitch podcast. I'm your host, Brittany Alicia. Greatness is a decision and your birthright. You deserve to love the woman looking back at you in the mirror. This show is for the purpose-driven female entrepreneur who is committed to only counting the time she gets back up. The woman who is ready to ignite the flame within, find her voice, and use the power of her story to transform the lives of those around her. This is your weekly fuel to inspire you to action, where I'll be sharing inspirational stories, real talks with thought leaders and successful entrepreneurs from around the world, and provide you with actionable success strategies for creating a business you love. I'm a content marketing coach, and I'm committed to helping you as an online creator and entrepreneur wherever you are to turn your dreams into a reality, to help you transform your messaging so you can create a genuine connection with your audience and grow your income online. You are far more powerful and stronger than you will ever imagine. We are the warriors. You were born for this. Let's make life your bitch. Hello, hello. Welcome to the Make Life Your Bitch podcast. I am your host, Brittany Alicia, and we have the Human Design series today, and I'm super excited about this one because I have Katie Carlson with me. She's a high energy expert, high performance coach, and human design specialist. She's into masculine and feminine authority. She's a speaker, breathwork instructor, and the founder of Heal, High Energy Abundant Living. Katie Carlson brings a unique perspective on how to leverage your own energy to heal physically, emotionally, intellectually, and spiritually. By leveraging non-traditional modalities, Katie takes people on a journey of transformation from the inside out. So when you're ready to heal from a high-performance energy place, you create even more abundance in your life. So we had a brief conversation before we got started, and this is going to be an amazing episode, you guys, because we are really going to tap into the feminine and masculine and really focus on, that intuition and how to connect that to your charts. So welcome, Katie.
Thank you so much, Brittany. I'm so energized to be here, excited to be on your podcast and share all this magic that comes from human design.
Yes, I'm excited too. I have been loving hearing about human design because the really cool thing about having a podcast is that you can do whatever you want. And for me, I don't do human design. So the thing I love about that is people aren't coming on here for me to try and sell them on anything. It's this is something that I am loving learning about. And I really felt that my audience would love it as well. So
yeah,
I'm excited about today because, some of the things we've talked about is different than what everyone else has been talking about.
Yeah. So let's first just start off with what is human design? Okay. At the highest level, human design is a system, right? And there's many different systems out there. And I like to tell people this, I don't believe that, human design is the end all be all. I believe it is one pathway that can help people transform and really create a life that they don't need a vacation from, understanding their own energy, understanding that energy attracts like energy. And once we raise our overall energy and we understand how our energy moves in our physical body, because we are all different, we can start to elevate our energy to higher energetic frequencies, which is then we become an energetic match for what we desire. So I love leveraging human design, and I'm super excited to share with you more about how human design kind of came into my vortex as well, and how it perhaps relates to you and many of your listeners out there today. So, human design at the highest level, it is a system, and it is comprised of the I Ching, ancient wisdom, the I Ching, the Kabbalah, the chakra system, and Western astrology. So, if you know the time and place in which you were born, and you know around about the time, I mean, if you have the exact time, amazing. If you don't, just go with your intuition, and you can go from there. Anyone
I
can
have a
pull.
quick question about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
With the timing, how much does it shift? Because I have checked my boyfriend's timing on his day, and his mom had originally said 11, and I'm like, is that morning or night? Because his chart is actually very different. He's still a projector, but very different in the timing. So we did end up finding out that it was in the evening, but
Yeah.
like
It
how
does.
do you
It
know
makes
how much it shifts?
Yeah. Yes. So it depends on where you were born. It depends on the location, but it also depends on, where the planets were in the sky. So as such, the moon transits through two different gates in one day. So even if, like, depending on where the planets are aligned with the moon, things could be very different. And then also the geographic location in which you came into this 3D physical world, that makes a big difference. So it's funny. I've actually pulled charts from people when they're like, well, yeah, I think it was around 11:30 in the morning. And then they're like, actually, no, it was 12:15. And it's not that they're like, it's dramatically different, but there are certain distinctions that would definitely play towards one particular type versus another. And so if you think of it that way, a lot of times it can be, depending on where the moon is, like if you were born in the morning or in the evening, I mean, it could shift, and also location. So there are so many different ways in which the human design imprint comes about. And so it's not like, oh, it's like a 30 minutes, or you got to be off by 30 minutes or 40 minutes. I always tell people when I'm working with them, if they're not specific, or if they don't know specifically their within 30 to 45 minutes of when they believe they were born, I will start asking them. I'll pull a couple different charts, and I'll start asking them certain questions that then give them a really good understanding of, like, oh, okay, this chart likely aligns with you a little bit more, and then kind of go from there. So
Okay, that's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a great question. So when we think about human design, and how I came about human design was literally, I actually don't even remember, but I stumbled across it through, the transformational work that I'd been doing. And I remember pulling my chart, and I remember pulling it because you can go online and pull a chart for free. Anyone can pull a chart. There's many different websites that allow you to pull a chart. However, once you pull the chart, I highly recommend go to someone that knows what they're talking about, because you're going to look at this and you're going to be like, okay, there's a lot of numbers, there's a lot of shapes, there's a lot of lines, there's a lot of like crazy things colored in. Like, what the heck does this mean?
There's a lot to it.
It is very, very complex. So I always tell people, go to someone, whether that's me or someone else, like just go to someone that knows a little bit about human design, because not all types and not all profiles and certain things in your chart, you're not necessarily meant to go deep into human design. However, in my human design, I'm very aligned to go deep in this area as a 1-3 profile, which I'll share more about later. However, I thought it would be really fun, Brittany, is to talk about how I leverage human design and look at your chart just to see what you can see. Because you and I, we don't know each other that well.
Mm-hmm.
And so it'll be really interesting to see how this resonates based on what I'm saying. And then we'll dive into how the energetics of human design support the masculine and feminine, and how we can leverage these energies to attract even more abundance in our life. Does that sound good?
That sounds good. And, I love that you are pulling up my chart, because as we're following along with this series, people are seeing, like, you guys are talking about my chart, but I think it's really allowing people to then, even though like it's one chart that is being explained. So that way, when people can you guys can, like, the listeners can connect with my chart kind of thing. And they're like, oh, okay, that aligns with my chart. That makes sense. So that's really cool.
Awesome. Okay. So first and foremost, when I look at your chart, I see that you're a self-projected projector. Now, giving a little bit of context here, guys. There's 5 types in human design. There's generators, which I am. Generators have really, really big energies, really, really big energy. And people are naturally drawn into their energy. And when generators' energy is out of alignment, they lean into frustration. Doesn't mean they don't get angry or bitter or disappointed, but their initial response is frustration. The next type is what we call the manifester. I like to think of manifestors as kind of like Moses and the Red Sea. They have this repelling aura. It's like they can just part the waves and it's like they go for it. They're meant to initiate and be kind of the fire starters of humanity. The third type is a bridge between the generator and the manifester, which is the manifesting generator. These manifesting generators collapse time. They're not meant to do one thing over and over and over again for long periods of time. They have got to have variety. They've got to be spinning lots of plates all at time, and they collapse time. The fourth type is a projector, which is what you are. Projectors are the seers of humanity. They are truly the guides of humanity. These are the people that are rising up right now to guide others to a higher path, because projectors see things that not everybody else sees. Now, and I'm also going to share with you, Brittany, how your projector and your profile, as I'm sure people have talked about your profile, how those go hand in hand together and how that supports you in your business and your life and your relationships, etc. So projectors, when we look at projectors' energy being out of alignment, doesn't mean they don't get angry or disappointed or frustrated, but their initial response is bitter. And projectors' energy is very much forward energy. It's like this in front of the body. It's very much out there. And projectors are meant to wait for the invitation. And this can be very
It's like this double-edged sword for us, because that's one of the biggest questions I have from projectors.
Yeah.
Is they're like, but how do I ask for the invitation in business?
Yeah. So I can share that. There's a couple different ways of doing this. And this is what I think sometimes projectors get a little bit too hung up on, the mechanics of the waiting for the invitation. It doesn't necessarily have to be a physical invitation. Like, hey, Brittany, tell me more about da, 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 da. It could be also a download, right? A download of something that's like, ooh, why do I need to talk about this? Ooh, but I'm feeling called to talk about this. That is also an invitation, because here's the thing. Projectors have a natural energetic aura that people will gravitate to as the energy comes into alignment. Projectors are meant to guide the energy. Projectors are incredible in business, especially if you're teamed up with a generator or a manifesting generator, well, even a manifester, but yeah.
It's funny because both my boyfriend and I are projectors, and our daughter, who's like 6 months here in a couple of days, she is a generator. And so she just like burns us both out.
Oh, I bet.
Like,
yeah.
Go all the time.
Yeah. And so here's the thing, Brittany, and I always say this, especially in business, because I've worked with a lot of different people and understanding the business dynamics with the types. You as a projector, you're not meant to work long hours. Mm-hmm. Where a generator, I can go back to back and work long hours. Doesn't mean I want to, but as long as I'm doing things that I love, if I'm talking about human design, time just goes by and I don't even know what's happened. Mm-hmm. Right. And it's time disappears. When generators are lit up by life, they can move through anything. And that's what rejuvenates their energy. Projectors, though, they don't have the battery pack that generators or manifesting generators have, and really manifestors, because manifestors have the motor, which I won't go into the details of that, but manifestors have a motor that they can get their energy from. Projectors, their energy source comes from rest. So it's literally about these cycles of, working for 2 hours, off for 2 hours or 3 hours, working for an hour and then off. It's not about like 9 to 5 or anything like that. Mm-hmm. And there's about 20% of the population make up around roughly the projectors. You as a projector, when your energy is in alignment, you're experiencing success. It is all about success. So for you, when you can feel success, that is when your energy is most aligned. That's when you're going to attract the invitations. That's when you're going to attract the abundance. What's really interesting too, and I always tell this, regardless of your type, and we didn't talk about the last type, but I'll bring that up here in just a second. Any of the types, generators, they're meant to lean into satisfaction. That's when their energy is in alignment. Manifestors, they feel inner peace. manifesting generators, it's peace and satisfaction. So it's kind of like this yin and yang, kind of have to figure out which one is in alignment with you in that moment. And then projectors is all about success.
And of course, everyone's wondering right now, like, but how do I get success? You know?
Yeah.
So, because everyone's like, you know, because there's always that question of like, well, find peace. Well, that seems easy. And no, do all the things. It's like, are the projectors over here are just like, I feel like we have the shitty end of the stick here.
So think about this. So this is one of the things that I always say to people, and this is something how I lean into satisfaction. What is something that brings you that feeling of success? And it could literally be, Brittany, celebrating the fact that you got out of bed, celebrating the fact that you made yourself a really beautiful cup of tea. It could be whatever it is, like whatever it is, it could be something different for anybody. Like, so for me as a generator, and when I lean into satisfaction, like I don't drink coffee. However, there is something that I just absolutely love about an almond milk latte. I don't do caffeine really. An almond milk latte with cinnamon on top, and it just pure silence, just pure silence. There's something that just, no matter what is going on around me, when I lean into that, I'm like, life is good. Everything is okay. And I can get my energy back into alignment. So for you, I would ask you, Brittany, how do you experience success? What does success feel like to you?
Well, and that would, like, I would say for me is very much the creative side of things, and completion. Yeah. Completion of things is when like I get success. But it's interesting that you say that because, you know, for me as a projector, when I first started my business, I had those family members where I would come out and I'd be like, I just made a sale. And their immediate response was to be like, to question it. And so that you're saying that, it's really interesting because even when I hit 6 figures in my business and I called my sister and I was like, guess what? And she's like, yeah, but how much do you spend on coaching? And I'm like, what? You know, so, you know, it was even a sale like, you know, a couple weeks ago, where I was like, oh, I just made this sale and, you know, it's a 5K sale and that kind of thing. My boyfriend's like, yeah, but it's only 5K. And I'm like, you are killing me here, bro.
This is so interesting. Well,
this is actually really funny that you mentioned this, but I mean, let's let the reflectors have their moment.
Yeah. So the reflector, so the last type, and then I want to dive really into your chart because this is going to be really, really fun. So the reflectors are the last type. That makes up less than 1% of the population. It's a very, very small percentage. And you know you're a reflector if you have if all the shapes in your chart are white. Or and you may have some lines, but all of the shapes in your chart are going to be white. And reflectors truly are here to act as mirrors of their environment. They're truly here to reflect the energy of their environment. And what's interesting about reflectors too is they're really great at the center of communities to understand where the health is of the community, what they need to do to move forward. Again, they're not meant to work long hours either. Projectors, reflectors, and manifestors are meant to work in ebbs and flows, truly like on a couple hours, off a couple hours. Generators and manifesting generators are the only ones that can work long hours. However, manifesting generators, they have to be really mindful because if they're doing things that don't light them up, they'll burn out really quickly. And projectors, if they're not doing things that align with success and make them feel successful, projectors will burn out. There are a lot of projectors out there, and I tell it like it is. I keep it real.
Yes, please do.
I keep it real.
It's called Make Life Your Bitch for a reason.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. So projectors actually, if they continue to question and feel into the bitterness of people, of the things that they say not landing with people, right? If they continue to penetrate that energy, they will burn out. And it is really hard once a projector burns out to get them back on track. They almost literally need to plug into a generator. So it's actually probably good. Is it do you have a daughter or a son?
A daughter.
A daughter. So it's actually really great that you have a daughter that's a generator because you can plug into her and she can actually like provide you a battery pack. Literally. And she probably does even now at 6 months old, you know? So,
well, and you know, even for myself, I mean, she's a little blah, but one of the permissions I've given myself with my business is this is why I'm doing this, right? Is for freedom and to
Yeah.
like, you know, obviously make a big difference in the world, but is that freedom to be able to spend time with my family. And by me being able to do that, it inspires other women. And it also,
Yeah.
because I work with women coaches in business to grow their
Yeah.
businesses, it gives them that opportunity as well. But the biggest thing I've been able to do is give my audience permission to have their kids around. And because otherwise I'm not doing anything, because she's
Yeah.
like always on the go. So I mean, now like my lives, like sometimes I'm holding her and she's like, you know, moving around and stuff. But
I
like
love it.
it's, you know, it is like that joy. And it was funny because even like I am very much someone who's on the go all the time because I
Yeah.
have so many ideas. So it's like getting that focus. But
Yeah.
the other day my phone died and she was in her jolly jumper jumping up and down, and because I have my own business, my boyfriend's been able to be at home with her as
Yeah.
well throughout all of this. And you know, I was sitting there and I was watching her and just the joy, and she's like jumping, it felt like to the sky, and I'm sitting there with him and it was like I started getting tears and I was like, this is the first time I felt like true gratitude in a long time. And it was like, I didn't even realize that I wasn't having gratitude until it was like that moment that it was like seeing her and the joy that she had, but also that gratitude and appreciation for my boyfriend being able to be there, because for her, like she's 6 months old and she's sitting up on her own already. And
Aw.
all these things that I know other kids maybe aren't doing, that I probably wouldn't be able to spend that quality time with her, helping her hit those milestones. And like as moms, like usually they're home alone, right? So having
Yeah.
both of us there and being able to both work with her has been, you know, that gratitude, like I said, I felt the other day. I was like, oh, it's been a while since I felt this. And ooh.
Interesting. Well, isn't that amazing though? And how special is that? Because, and just the fact of your understanding and recognition of that is so powerful, because as a projector, you're truly here to guide others through that process. And it's really interesting as I'm looking at your chart. I think this would be fun to like, let's dive into your chart. And this is just based on what your human design says. And you tell me if I'm off, whatever. I'm just going to kind of riff for a little bit and I'm going to just go through the chart. Like, I don't know who you are or what you do or anything like that. And this is basically like, this would be like a blind reading. And I'll
Which
just
I
tell
just
you what
want
I
to touch
see.
on for the listeners.
Yeah.
Like Katie and I have had like a few voice messages back and forth. I think you found me on Alpha Femme, I think is where
Yes.
I did a
Yeah.
post and I just asked for people who were interested in being on the podcast. So that is the extent of our conversation. So I'm excited about this because
Yeah.
and a lot of the women on here aren't people that I've connected with personally. So it's interesting watching everyone go through reading charts and, you know, the way that people are going to be able to see that, like, this isn't just one of those like woo-woo things that it's like secretly not a thing. Do you know what I mean?
It's legit. And it's so funny because people will literally, when I'm like going through their chart, and I love doing this like out in public, like that's like actually my favorite. Like I do like one-on-one reading stuff, but I love doing it out in public because it's just like, oh, do you know what time you're born? And I'll just like whip it up. And they're like, how do you know this? So it's like, you're speaking to my soul. You're saying things that I felt. I just didn't know how to articulate. I mean, it's wild. So I'm going to start here. As a projector, right, you're meant to guide the energy of the universe. When I'm looking at your chart, you have two defined centers, your throat and your G center, which means your G center being defined is all about direction. And it's all about kind of your true north and clearing the path of where you're going to be. Within your G center, you have activations in gate 7 and gate 10. Gate 7 is all about leadership. You are truly meant to lead. And it's interesting because it's also in your design Jupiter, which is part of your work and culture. And you're meant to be a leader entrepreneur because you have that, like that first line in your business culture. So you are truly meant to be an entrepreneur through and through.
That's
and
good.
Yeah,
good. I'm on the
like
right track so far.
Yes. And leading people through that process. So working with other business owners sounds like it's a really good fit. So we have in human design what's called an incarnation cross. Our incarnation cross is really our life's purpose. What is our soul's mission on this planet? Yours is the right angle cross of rulership, and it's fueled by the energy of listening to others, educating, and figuring things out. You have the energy to literally rule the world.
Well, I do say on this podcast that it's bringing people on here so that they have a message so powerful they can change the world. So
yeah, I mean, it's literally, that is your purpose. Whether it manifests as your own individual world, your family, your town, your country, you have the capacity to rule with grace and ease because you have this like leader, you have this very dominant leadership energy. This is the rulership that elevates you. When I say rulership, sometimes that can be taken as like, oh, is like dictator, like, no, it's leading from an intentional, it's leading from an intentional space, truly, and how you can guide others in that process. Now, as a self-projected projector, it is so important for you to have a voice, for you to speak, and you have a defined throat. And with that defined throat, it is super important for you to have something like a podcast, which you do. Have a YouTube channel, write a book. Through these different expressions, it's so important for you to activate your throat center. What's really interesting is you also have gate 45. I have gate 45 as well. And it's the queen energy. And it's this ability to gather people together and rise above no matter what. And this queen energy goes really well with the hunter-huntress energy. So whether you, like, if you have gate 45 in your chart, and even if you don't have it, you still have access to this energy. I want to be very clear when it comes to reading human design. Even if you don't have a gate or a channel that is defined, you're like, ooh, that sounds really awesome, and I would love to have that. Doesn't mean you don't have access to that energy. It's just your pathway of getting there is a little bit different. But you have defined gate and gate 45, as do I. And this is part of the money line channel. So if, as in business, and projectors are meant to work with a team of people, I would highly recommend looking at if one person, at least on your team, has gate 21 as a hunter or a huntress, that will activate you in a very, very powerful way.
So that's the person I need to go out and grow my audience, is what you're saying.
Yes, actually, yes, that is it. And I have a lot of friends that are gate 21, and that have that gate. I've done thousands of these, but the gate 45, that money line, you activate that and it's like, whoo, it's game over. Also, you can pay attention to the transit. So what's really interesting, and how I mentioned that even if you don't have it defined in your chart, that's like the time that you were born, doesn't matter, because what happens is, as we all know, the planets move and they cycle and they circle and they go around. You can go in, there's some software that I use through Genetic Matrix. You can go in and watch and look and see what channels or gates you get activated based on the transit and how that supports your energetic flow. So like for me, a lot of time, or like for you, if you had gate 21 activated in a transit, or you were able to schedule it and look it out in a calendar, it'd be like, okay, that's when I want to launch. That's when I want to launch something. That's when, whether you want to launch something or have it it needs to be out in the open that day, because that's your money line. That's when you're going to start to attract even more abundance. There's a lot of different ways in which you can play with this. And regardless of what planet or what gate, there's some really powerful tools. And again, more conversation for another time, because we can go down that rabbit hole. However, what I want to say about you is you have a profile. We all have a profile. I'm a 1-3, you're a 2-4. There are 6 different lines in the profile, and there's 12 different profiles. They make up a combination. So it's a combination. It could be a 2-6, a 6-2, a 4-6, a 3-5. Like there's many, many combinations. I'm a 1-3. You're a 2-4. The 2-4 is like the easy breezy genius. This means that you cultivate your genius in your alone time. It's really, really important for you to have alone time. Also, because you're a projector, you really need your alone time. And with the line 2 as your profile, within your profile, the profile, guys, is how we interact with the energies of the universe. This is how people see us. This is how people come to us. The 4 line is very resourceful. This is someone that's very connected to a network. They can be very social. They don't have to be. However, a lot of times they really appreciate being in groups of people or having different networks of people, groups of people. They thrive on that, and they're also very resourceful. So people will come to them if they have questions or if they want to be connected to someone. Like, they're the connectors of humanity. And when I look at the rest of your chart, it's really, really fascinating. You're a single definition, and this is great news. That single definition means you have easy flow through your chart. There's split definition, there's triple split. And again, I won't go into the nitty gritty details around it. I'll just tell you that single definition means you have easy flow through your chart. That means your energy will naturally flow through your chart. However, that doesn't mean that your energy can't get clogged up based on the transits. So it's always really important to look at how your chart is interacting with the energies of the universe that are going on. We just got out of a Mercury retrograde. There were a lot of things that were happening energetically. And it's really funny and fascinating to see like how those things play out in our chart once you understand and kind of see that. I also see.
Can you just briefly expand on just briefly on transits and what that means?
Yeah. So when you think about, like the full moon, right? And the moon, right? The moon cycles every 28 days. All the planets, and I think moon is probably the easiest one to explain. However, the moon cycles, right?
Mm-hmm.
Every 28 days. And, it goes through waning, gibbous, and all the different phases of the moon. Within that, as that happens, the other planets are shifting and adjusting and pivoting. And the best way that I look at this, because you can get like, oh, well, Venus is doing this and Jupiter's doing this, and it can get wild. It can get really wild. What I tend to focus on, especially with my clients, is the sun energy, the moon energy, and the node energy, because those energies are going to give you really, really powerful understandings of how you can leverage the energy that maybe you don't have normally in your chart and how you can leverage it in the transits. Because literally, like if I were to pull my chart this morning at, 7:00, it's going to look a little bit different than it would if I pulled it now. Because the moon and the planets are shifting. They're always shifting. Now, but like Pluto stays in the same spot for 30 years. So like Pluto's not going anywhere, right? But other planets could be cycling around Pluto. So when we talk about the planets, it's a much deeper conversation. However, when I talk to people, especially with my clients and in business, it's how can you leverage certain transits? So I'll just give you a quick little tidbit. The 1-8 channel. So that's from the throat to the G center. You don't have that naturally. I think it was last year, like around, it was in 2022, like April, like end of March, April, May-ish. The nodes were in gate 1 and gate 8, which created the channel from the throat to the G center, which activates a lot of people, activates a lot of people's creativity. And creativity is in the gate 8, and the gate 1 is all about action. It's the masculine energy. Gate 1 is much more masculine. Gate 2 is much more feminine. And again, guys, there's 64 gates. So there's a lot of information here. We won't be able to get through all of it in this time. However, one of the things that I've leveraged, because I don't have gate 8 or gate 1 in my chart either. During that time when gate 1 and gate 8 were activated in the nodes, oh my gosh, Brittany, I was creating so much content. Like it was insane. I mean, the things that were coming out of it was just like, and I was having so much fun with it. And I was like playing with Canva, and I was working with my graphic designer, and I was doing all of these things, and I was creating all these ebooks, and I was just like, this is nuts. However, if you tap into this energy, it can work for you, especially as a projector, so because me having a activated sacral, like I have a completely defined sacral, I have access to an abundant amount of energy if I'm being lit up by life. If I'm not being lit up by life, most generators have this problem. Most, not all, most generators have a problem of doing things that they don't want to do because they feel like they should do them. And that's when generators get in trouble. And that's when they burn themselves out, and they get, it can end up not being a great road. And that's where boundaries come into play. Very, very strong boundaries for generators. However, if you can start leveraging the activations in some of these gates to get to work through your business, like, okay. And, you've been an alpha femme. So, Melanie talks about like the CEO day, right? And, creating content and providing that structure so that you can then allow that feminine flow to come through. One of the things that I love about human design, and this is how I kind of sprinkle in the gene keys, is the human design at the very core provides the infrastructure, gives people a basic understanding of how your energy moves. The real magic, the special sauce, is when you apply the gene keys to human design. It is very well integrated. The human design, I like to look at that as the masculine. It holds the structure. Gene keys is the feminine. It's creating that intuition. It literally just reading through what each of the gates mean and their activations. The gene keys are made up of a gift, a shadow, and a city. So the gift is when we are lit up by that energy. The shadow is when we are avoiding something or we're feeling a lower level energy around a particular situation, a person, a life path, it doesn't matter. It's a lower level of energy. When we look at the gift and we own the shadow, embrace the shadow, love the shadow, we then naturally create an electromagnetic connection that honors the city. And the city is the integration between the gift and the shadow. And just by contemplating the words, it is such a powerful, powerful tool. And I'm going to give you an example of this. So I'm going to, in your chart, Brittany, your greatest energy is in gate 22, which is in your solar plexus. This is an emotional energy. It's all about holding grace, being open, being the hostess with the mostest. You love hosting. There's this you have this ability to take social grace to an art, to deliver this incredibly beautiful space when you are really leading from that centered, graceful, emotional space. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And it's actually really interesting with that because I imagine if I'm blocked in that area, that there's that issue because there's a program that I teach and it's called Abundance Codes. And it's asking women to listen to their bodies, to connect with their bodies, and ask their body, like, where's my money block? And following that intuitive nudge. And for me, quite often, and I say, like, put your hands there. And then I ask them to play the tape to the end. Like, what story, what memory comes up for you? Play it to the end. It's time to release it because the worst energy that we can have or feeling is frustration because that means nothing's moving.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so like, I'll say to my clients, like, go scream, go do whatever. I mean, don't hit someone else, but go be angry, like get things moving again. And for me, that's one of the things that I often feel myself going to is like, my hands are just like always drawn to like that solar plexus. Like that's where the shit likes to pile up and hang out for me.
Yep. Yep. And you know, what's really interesting as you say that is just so you know, so like from the gene key perspective, the gene key of gate 22. So the shadow of it is dishonor. And when I say that, it likely will activate something in you of like, when you feel like you're not honoring yourself. And the reason why I say when you're not honoring yourself, you get really out of alignment because you have gate activations. You have multiple activations in gate 10, which is all about loving yourself. It's all about self-love and it's connected to your throat. And so it's important for you to step up and speak about how to honor and love yourself. Because what happens a lot of times, and especially as we overlay the projector aspect of gate 22 with the shadow of dishonor, it's about how can you honor yourself through your voice, right? As a self-projected projector, it's so important for you to hear the sounds. Sound is very, very important in your makeup. The sounds, like the vibrational sounds of just things, even maybe when your baby cries, or like there's certain things that sound is very activating to you, and it could be in a great way. And it could also be a not so great way. So I always tell people, especially if you're a self-projected projector, sound healings are really great. Having different gongs or certain things that can level out your energy or center or ground your energy is really, really important to kind of keep things moving. What's also really interesting is that you have activations in Well, let me back up with this. Your shadow in gate 22 is dishonor. When you feel that, it's going to be important for you to release that, right? That releaseness, that releasing that space, that energy promotes this feeling of graciousness. It's grace within yourself. It's promoting the love that you have within yourself and giving yourself that grace. And the highest city of this is just that utmost grace. It literally is grace at its highest level. So the gift is graciousness, the shadow is dishonor, and the city of integrating the two is grace. It's this higher level of grace, which when you read the gene keys and you read the shadow, the gift, and the city, things will literally change within you. It's like reading poetry. I don't know how to explain it. If you have the gene keys, but I would highly recommend it. Even if you're not even planning to become a coach or like even teach from it, it is such a powerful book just to understand.
Oh, is that what the book is called? That
it's called Gene Keys. Yeah, it's called Gene Keys, and it's a big one. It's a huge book, but it has all the 64 gates, and it goes through the shadow, the gift, and the city. And just going through, just reading through this will activate and unlock certain codes in your body that will release the shadow, that supports the gift and creates the city. It is unlike anything I've ever experienced. It is so magical. It is, I don't know how to explain it other than that. It is just, it will activate things in you.
So I have a question. Yes. I wonder if it's on Audible.
I think it is.
Because if for me, it's sound.
It is sound. It is sound. I need to look. Actually, that's a really good question. Someone I think told me that it might actually be on Audible. And that would be amazing because then you can just go straight to the gate and literally just listen to it over and over and over again.
Well, especially for myself when, I'm all about sound,
all about sound. It would be, it would be amazing. Yeah, actually. And I think, as a self-projected projector, 100%. I would say if you are not a self-projected projector and you're any other authority, because self-projected is the only projectors are self-projected. I would say if you're any other authority, get the book and read it.
And that one's the one by Richard Rudd?
Richard Rudd.
Yeah, it's on there.
Awesome. My gosh, that's so cool. I should probably get it down on my phone so then I can actually access it. So that's really interesting. And then when I look at your chart, what I find is really fascinating is that when we look at your design Mars, this is in gate 20, which is in line 1, which is all about content. You're meant to just make content and create content. And that, which again, is
good because I'm literally doing a masterclass next week on content.
Perfect. And that's literally, that's perfect. And that's literally what you're meant to do. And what's really interesting about this is within this gate, so it's gate 20, it's in your throat and it's all about contemplation. It's this art of contemplation, speaking in the now, right? Like literally delivering the message in the now, in the present. You have this incredible voice of like alchemy, right? This synergy of bringing things together from past, present, and future into that like exact moment. And that's literally what you're meant to do. So Facebook Lives, Instagram Lives, podcast, voicing this out, Zooms, whatever, masterclasses, things that give you that presence with people in the moment. That's literally what you're meant to do and what we would typically call your 9 to 5. You also have in your design Jupiter, this is where we find your business culture, the best way in which you work. And I mentioned this earlier. It's in your line 7 and it's in gate 7, line 1. Gate 7 is all about leadership. It's in the G center. It's the role of self. It's kind of like leading the army, right? Like being kind of the head of the army, the shepherd, empowering people through systems with grace. So you have that grace, which gives you that like emotional connection, however, aligning with the systems. And that's also part of your projectorness. Projectors are all about systems and the need for systems because they have this ability to see things that not everybody else can see. And when they don't see it, they can get a little prickly. That's what I say. My mom is a projector. So it's funny. Like I love projectors. Like projectors are so magical. Like they're such incredible humans because they truly we need to honor and appreciate them for their gifts, because they are truly here to guide the energy of the universe and move humanity forward, which
I
is
have a
really, really
question.
powerful. Yeah.
Because I find this is one question that often comes up for me, especially doing the human design series. So imagine I'm not the only one. With myself as a self-projected projector, when I obviously can look and see, that big picture, for me, I do have a lot of systems and that kind of thing for how I help people achieve what they desire. Also because of that, I'm very aware of other people's systems and why people are investing in those coaches and then it doesn't work for them. But like my concern for myself is like, if I'm teaching a system, even though I'm helping, like I help my clients find their own way of doing things. But my biggest fear always is like, if I'm operating too much from my human design and teaching someone else, that I'm going to throw them off track. Does that make sense?
Yes. And that's just your conditioning.
Okay.
And that's just owning who you are.
Mm-hmm.
So what's interesting, and as we look at that, so because you do have gate 10 and you do have 51. So it's just you taking on other people's energies. Because you do have an undefined solar plexus. However, that's where your greatest energy is. But because you're undefined, you take on a lot of people's energy. I do too. I am completely open in my solar plexus, which gives me the ability to connect with people so easily. Like I can build rapport. Like I am connecting with people. However, we can get slimed with other people's energies. So it's really about recognizing where you might be getting slimed. And this is one of the things that I always do, Brittany, is I will, like, if I'm feeling like, I don't know if you've ever like walked into a room and then all of a sudden you're just like, I just don't feel right. Like I'm just taking on some sort of energy. Like something is just off. Like, I don't know what it is. A lot of times you've picked up someone else's energy and they've invaded your aura. And so what I do is I just close my eyes and I say, is this mine? Is this my energy? And usually I'll get a yes if it is. And if it is mine, then I'll just release it down into Mother Earth and I portal drop and I allow the energy to move through me. If it is not my energy, I say return to sender with consciousness attached. Because it truly return to sender with consciousness attached, and it'll move through you. It actually will move through you much quicker. And when you do that, you'll actually be able to take back your own power. Because what's happened, like if you're like, well, if it doesn't work for me, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for them. However, you have a knowing, and because you have an undefined spleen, you will always be, and I say this in the most empowering way. There will always be, and everyone's going to have fear. However, if you have an undefined spleen, fear is much more prevalent in your aura, and not in a bad way. It's how do you dance with it? How can you work with the fear in order to support yourself and others? And this is tied strictly to your values, because you have one gate that is activated in your spleen, which is gate 50, and it's the cauldron. It's all about values. When you align with your values and don't shy away from your values, right? Don't sacrifice your values to meet your needs. You will be able to dance with the fear and then take back your power. So it's really about owning the certainty and saying, hey, you know what? This is what's worked for me. Try it on. And if it doesn't work for you, we pivot, right? Yeah. It's not like a one trick pony. This is not the one show like where we go, right? It's we adapt. We have this ability to adapt. You do have a defined G center. So adaptability isn't necessarily something that you're going to want to lean to all the time. However, the more that you allow yourself to lean into being flexible with your approach, you'll crush it. You'll absolutely crush it. You do have a really strong sales energy. In gate 26, I have this as well, which means it's not like, oh, sales, because so many people think sales is a bad thing. Sales is amazing. Sales makes the world go round. Mm-hmm. I love sales. And because of that, you will always have this ability to connect with people, build rapport in such a way that will drive results. You have an undefined root, but you have a lot of activation in your root. that gives you the fuel to make things happen. And you're also very cyclical in your thing. So it's important for when you start something, you've got to finish it. You have to close the loop, because if you have open loops, your energy leaks out and you'll burn yourself out very quickly. You have gate 58, which is, I love this gate because it's a part of my incarnation cross. Gate 58 is all about fun. It's all about having fun. You got to have fun. And you have a hanging gate here, which means it's hanging towards gate 18. Gate 18 is all about judgment and correction. And so you may tend at times to feel like you have to fix things. Like there's just always like this, like, oh, if I can just make this little fix, I can just make this little, oh, well, if they just tweaked it here, if they just did this, you'll always kind of be reaching for that. However, in business, if you can find someone that has an 18 that connects with and doesn't compromise your 58, you'll have some really powerful energy within your spleen, intuition, as well as your root, which will activate it. So when you're looking at, this is why I love working with people in business and in teams, because you can overlap people's charts to see how they're going to resonate. You can also do this with couples in relationship. You can overlap their charts to see how, like where their electromagnetic connections are, where their compromise channels are, which is where they may have a little bit of conflict, and how you can work through it. My partner, it's incredible to see the synergies, and also like, oh, well, we may run into it here, but then having that proactiveness, we can talk about it now, and it'll just, kill the monster while it's small, kind of a thing. But and then in business, you want to have a good mix of people that complete the channels. And literally we interact with people and we activate different energies within other people, and we come together. Like you and I connected. I could overlap our charts. I have no idea why we connected or how that ended up happening, but it was an energy. I can literally look at our charts overlapped, and I'll be like, oh, this is why we got connected. Like, this is it. Yes, it was a podcast. There may be other things I don't know because I'm not looking at it right now, but there's powerful tools within this human design when you can see how these different charts can overlap. Mm-hmm. Now, the other piece I want to say that there is this tendency. So I'm curious, in the past, have you gotten caught up in drama? Like,
I'm like, who hasn't?
Well, so some people are more prone to drama than others. And it's actually in your gate 36. It's activated in your gate 36, which is this, we say it's like the drama queen energy. And it's not bad. It's just, there's passion. There's a lot of passion. And because you're undefined here, a lot of other people can bring you their stuff, and then you end up taking it on. And then it's like,
mm-hmm. Which is something fun. That I've very much learned, especially in this last year, of like cutting those cords as to like, this is not serving me. So I'm just going to remove myself from this group. And it's funny you say that, because even as a kid in high school, I was like friends with everyone, but close with no one. Do you know what I mean? Like, and it was because of girl drama in grade 7, 8, where I was just like, I ain't getting like close to anyone. And so I would like go in and be friends with a group, and they'd maybe get into drugs, or there was maybe drama there, and I'd like slowly back myself out and go hang out with other groups of people.
Yes, that's so true. Because you have this ability to be like this compassionate sage. You have that ability to kind of remove yourself gracefully, truly. Mm-hmm. But because you have this undefined, and I'm the same way too, because I'm completely open. You're undefined. I'm open. Your undefinedness, like you're taking on people's energies all the time. And so it's so important as you talk things out. So even if you're like making decisions, or if you're talking to your partner, right, or your boyfriend, talk it out to yourself, and like go to the bathroom and just talk it out. Literally, just because hearing the sound and hearing it come through you, you'll be able to articulate and refine it even more when you actually are being invited to speak on this or whatever. So, if you're a speaker or something, or if you're speaking at an event or whatnot, it like everybody needs to rehearse and be, proactive. But for you especially, it's going to be super, super important for you to play that over and over again. And when you're making decisions, play out, literally talk out those different pathways, and then you'll have the decision. Like it'll come to you almost almost instantly, truly through the vibrational sound. And it'll become very, very clear. The last thing I want to say too, around your chart, which is really fascinating, is you and your personality, Jupiter. This is where we find our greatest prosperity. And this is about, this is in your throat center. This is in gate 31, which is all about influence. And it's like leading with the power of manifestation, understanding the power of manifestation and leading people through that. So you have this, like, you're just this natural leader. And I mentioned that from the gate 7, but you have, I believe it's the channel. Yeah. The channel 31-7 is as a complete channel. And it's all about being the visionary, being the influencer, being the one that guides people and gives them even more opportunities and potentials to move forward. So, I mean, truly, you are doing exactly what you're meant to do. You're living in your purpose. You're living that. You're doing that. The other thing that's really fascinating about human design, and I'll just show this. I know they can't see the screen, but I'll just show you so you can get a little bit familiar with this. So, can you see my screen, Brittany?
Yes.
Okay. So, do you see how you have these arrows right here to the left?
Okay. Yeah.
So what's really interesting is you are, when we look at manifestation, everybody manifests according to human design, this is strictly for human design, everybody manifests different. And looking at your design the arrow, you can see this from the left side. On the design side, your bottom left arrow faces left and your, bottom right arrow faces left. So you are an active, specific manifester. Now, what does that mean? You love the feeling of actively participating in your manifestation process. You maybe obsess over your manifestation ability at times. You have this observed energy. And you thrive when you're being watched or you're working and you're learning something new. Like you just have this like, cause you're in the thick of it. It's like truly being in the thick of the process of like, yeah, like I'm in this, like I'm doing this. On the flip side, like, this is different. I'm passive. So the passiveness manifester. So if your bottom left arrow goes to the right, it's all about feeling freedom in your manifestation process, not necessarily being active in it, more just like letting it go, letting it flow. You could also look at this as more of a feminine energy, and your manifestation is more of a masculine, which means about like getting things done, action, taking action. Whereas mine is more passive and it's like, okay, I need to be more receptive, being more into the feeling of it. Now, this doesn't mean that you're more masculine, right? Or like, oh gosh, I'm more masculine. It just means how your manifestation process works. Your manifestation being active is about staying active in your environment. It's about, even just movement. It's like having that body movement. So that's where the feminineness comes into the active manifestation process of really allowing that energy to flow through you, as you mentioned, through your solar plexus. That's actually how you're going to exit a lot of all of your excess energy will actually go through your solar plexus, which it does for most people, not all people. And that just is dependent on their designs, but yours goes through your solar plexus. The specificness. So if we look at the chart here, and we look at the right bottom arrow that's facing to the left, this is all about visualization. So being really, really specific and writing it down. If there's specific things that you want to manifest, Brittany, you got to write it down. When you write, you invite. So write it down and with as much detail as possible, have fun with it. And because when you write it, even when you speak it, I would speak it and I would write it for a double whammy. But when you write it down, that's when you're really going to start to see those manifestations, those blossoms from those seeds that you've planted, is when you write it down and you get really specific. Now, on the flip side, I am non-specific. So I don't know I'm sure you've been to different events where people have said like, okay, write down the 3 things that you want to do. Like, I never have the 3 things. I'm like, there's 5,000 things. I don't know, but I know the feeling. Mm-hmm. So people that are that are non-specific, the opposite of you, it's important to lean in to the feeling of what you would like to receive. And a lot of times we don't even know what it is that we want to receive. It's just the feeling. And then once we receive it, we're like, oh yeah, that's what I wanted. but we're not really specific on, like, we don't actually know what it is. And so it's really fascinating when you can start to see these different approaches of like actually how we manifest. Now, this doesn't mean that I can't write things down or I don't journal, because there's certain activations in my chart that really promote me journaling, getting my voice out there and speaking my story. However, when we think about really leaning into the energy of what we would typically call manifestation, the active and passive, non-specific and specific, is a really, really powerful way to lean in, to even just start the process of understanding how to manifest for your specific type. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I know we've been going really long, so I don't know how much time we have.
It's one of those things where with
Okay.
the podcast, I always say to people, like, there is no time limit on this, because
perfect.
I don't like to rush people through anything.
Okay, perfect. So I'll keep going a little bit longer to kind of
Can I share some things with
Yes.
you that have like, so that people know, like, this
Yeah.
is what's coming through for me?
Yes, please.
So, looking on both sides of things as to things that I'm realizing that like I'm doing that it's like, ooh, that's not working for me. And the things that are, just briefly on, the manifestation side of things is, things that I do is I write a letter to myself. So I decide what I want. I set 90-day goals, write a letter, and I read it out loud. And I know when I do it, it works. And when I don't do that, it's funny because like then I struggle. So for me, I do have a clear morning routine, but if I don't do it and I fall off track, and then I'm like, well, why isn't manifestation working? But on the other side of things, I also do have that mindset where I'm like, if I'm obsessing over this too much, like I'm trying to control it too much. Mm-hmm. And so it's like trying to find, like, I like that you said that there's different ways for different people to manifest. I think it's so important that people hear that, because they're like, oh, that's why that person told me to do that and it's not working for me. And so I always say, like, I think any routine that you do, you need to understand the overarching, like, this is how it works, this is why it works, and then finding your own way of doing things. Because my things are doing a visualization in the morning, doing I know I am statements in the mirror to myself for 2 minutes. My daughter does them with me. I mean, she can't talk. Aww. But there's a new like Snoop Dogg song, and it's for kids, and it's called Affirmations, and it's so cute. So whenever she's in the bath, I play it for her.
Oh my gosh, that's so amazing. That is incredible.
It's cute.
Oh my gosh.
Then the letter, right? The one thing I do know that I need to be doing is, even if it's in the evening or whatever, is a grounding meditation. Because I am someone who like goes on the creative side of things, I do know that I do operate best when I toggle back and forth between my feminine. So if I do like in the morning, if I do a silent meditation and just listen, I always say like my feminine is the one who tells my masculine, this is what I want, go do this. Okay. And and then I take a break and I go have my coffee, and I do it again. And it's like, for me, like you said, toggling back and forth again. When I'm not doing that and I'm just in like go mode, that's when like that overwhelm starts to come in.
It is,
the thing that you mentioned with fun, that's the word that I said is my word for the year, is fun. Oh my God, I love everything that. I do, I said to myself, like, I will ask myself, is this fun? And if it's not, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
Another thing is, it was actually funny because you made the comment about tweak, and it's funny because I just sent an email this morning about how I'm going to help women tweak just those little things in their business for their content.
Yeah.
For you, because I mean, you don't know much about my business. Right?
Yeah.
The things so what I ran into last fall was, that's when like the doors really opened for me, as to seeing why things weren't working for other people in their businesses, how they were going to coaches and coaches were teaching them specific strategies and why it wasn't working for people. And it was at that point, because 2 years ago, I was teaching my program, the Independent Boss Babe Academy. And with that, it was helping women hit 10K months. Well, I stepped away from that for a while and I got into the energetic side of things. And then I came back and there was that question of, I love talking about manifestation. Like I love talking about, and like I got a download where it's like talking about the fifth dimension and like the manifestation side of things and like all of this when it comes to your business. So there was like that side of things, which I talk about in the podcast. And then there's the other side of things where I'm like, but I love content. So it's like fascinating that that is everything that you're talking about,
Yeah.
because those are my two things that I'm like so passionate about. I'm like, how do I talk about both of these? And so as I've started to come into, understanding that more, it's been really cool. But even in December, I hit this point where I said, like, I am so tired of seeing these women struggle because they're following other people's strategies and thinking like, I had someone once tell me, they're like, this is my morning routine. You need to do this. Like, try it for 30 days. Just do it. And I'm like, that doesn't bring me joy. Like, that doesn't feel good. So no, I'm not going to do that. And so being like that projector and seeing that, it's allowed me to see why other people's strategies don't work for someone else. Right.
Yeah.
And
And you're
so
meant to show that.
Mhm. And so I ended up saying, like I threw into my program. So it's there, at the time of this recording, where I have a 10K guarantee. If you've worked with me for a year, inside like my Make Life Your Bitch mastermind and you haven't hit 10K months, I will work with you for free. Because if you're doing the work, like to me, it's like, there's no reason that you shouldn't be able to do that. And it's shocking to me, the women who are struggling for years, not being able to hit a 10K month. Like to me, I'm just like, cause as the projector, I'm just like, this doesn't make sense. Why is it so hard for you?
Yeah, but that's also your gift, is being able to see that, and then also be able to see the gaps and where people are not necessarily maybe they don't have that system that you've been able to see, or it's where they have their own holes, right? And so you have the ability to see that, whereas it's so easy for you to see, it's just not as easy for them to see. And that's why the synergy of working together, I mean, literally, like, you're doing exactly what you're meant to do, and I think one of the things when you talked about, when I was mentioning kind of the fear around, all of that's just conditioning. If you just become conscious of it and you're like, oh, flush it, just flush the energy, like ground it down, portal drop, whatever you got to do, flush it. And literally, like, you let that energy release, and then you'll have that, because it's almost like then that confidence comes back and you're like, oh, because here's the deal. There's not like a one trick pony. However, as a projector, you can see things that like people, like even me, that I could see. You could probably look at my business and be like, oh, like within minutes, be like, doot, 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 doot. And you'd be able to see where the holes are. And that's a gift. Like, that's truly a gift. Now, it doesn't mean that generators and manifesting generators and manifestors can't have their own business. However, I will tell you, like, my VA is a projector. Like, she's like my right-hand woman. She's a projector. And so she's able to, like, oh, Katie, like, she'll see these like certain things, and it's amazing, And so this is why it's important to have all the types really in business, and especially having a team around you. And if you've only got a couple people, for a generator, highly recommend getting a projector as someone that can oversee, because generators and projectors, they have very different energies, but they leverage each other. Projectors can plug into generators' energy, and it's not like you're taking from me way. It's, you're giving me guidance. And so, hey, here's the energy, here's the battery pack. Like, people used to call me for so long. I mean, I've always had a ton of energy. Like, I've always had a ton of energy, and I have a defined root, a defined sacral, and a defined spleen. So I have a lot of energy. And people are like, you're like the Energizer Bunny. How do you have this energy? Well, I also can burn out if I'm not doing the things that I love. I was a salesperson for many, many years, selling over $250 million in healthcare and all this stuff. But I burned myself out because I wasn't doing what I loved. I wasn't doing what I loved, but I had to go through that process in order to come alive. And truly, like, human design. And I've done lots of different, Tony Robbins, and I'm an IPEC, and, Joe Dispenza, and I've done lots of different things, and I've had lots of different amazing mentors. And it's really about understanding who you are, how your energy moves, and then you deciding. This is not about other people deciding for us. It's how can we come together as a collective, as women entrepreneurs. Like one of the things that I absolutely love, and you know this because of you were in the AFE, Melanie Ann Layer, she's incredible. And she talks, she's basically, and you're doing the same, is she's building up other women business owners, right? Building up her greatest competition, because together we rise.
And it's
right?
so funny because a woman messaged me today and she said, I posted something in your group and I just deleted it. And I said, okay. And she's like, well, I help people with like, similar stuff that you do. And she sent me the message and she's like, when I sent it, she's like, it just kind of felt like sleazy. And it was like kind of a sales post. And I said, well, here's the thing. I said, I allowed promotion in my group, but the reality is, I said, if you're promoting in there and you aren't giving any sort of value, I said, it's going to fall on deaf ears anyway.
Yeah.
I said, so, at the end of the day, I said, you always need to follow what feels good. And I said, like, there's more than enough people in this world. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not worried about someone stealing someone from me. And I said to her, like, at the end of the day, like, and my exact words were, we rise together,
Yeah. Together
like,
we do.
My feelings.
Yeah. Together we truly do. Together we rise. And I think that's one of the biggest distinction. But Brittany, it's so interesting that you say that, because it's like, you have an abundant mindset, right? And you see the bigger picture. You're a projector. Doesn't mean that generators and manifesting generators don't see the bigger picture. It just takes us a little bit to get to that space. And just like generators and manifesting generators, we have a constant battery pack. So like projectors, they're exhausted a lot of the time. Like literally, and they go through these ebbs and flows. You got to let a projector rest. You got to let a manifestor rest. Generators, like, I mean, I just got back from Tony Robbins' Business Mastery, sleeping 4.5 hours a night, and I've got incredible energy. Like I feel great. I feel amazing. I have a battery pack, and I'm doing the things that like light me up. And so when you do things that light you up, and that's true for any type, doesn't matter what type you are. If you're doing something that lights you up, that makes you feel successful, that makes you feel peace, that makes you feel satisfied, that makes you feel surprised. For a reflector, it's all about feeling surprised. If you have those feelings, you're on the right, you're on the right path. And at the end of the day, it's all divine. It's how you choose to leverage these energies to work for you. So I've loved learning and supporting human design and leveraging human design in my business as well as other people's business. I mean, it's so fascinating. And even just also, from a validate, like, I don't even know if it's valid. I don't like the word validation, but it kind of does, because people are like, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense. Like, this is why I'm running up against this, or this is why I'm running up against this. So like, I didn't talk a ton about the shadow side of your chart, but we all have it. When you talk about focus. So you have an undefined head. So you're going to have ideas and thoughts and information just coming in all the time. They're not all for you. They're not all for you.
I've heard that.
Yeah. They're not all for you. So it's important for you just to, talk it out. For you, especially being a self-projected projector, talk it out. You have also half of gate 43, which is the 4323 channel, which is the genius to freak. So you're going to be constantly, so it's kind of like own your freak. And that's where your genius lies. If you find someone in business and part of your team that works there, like, it'll just activate more of your energy. Yeah. I mean, you have a very, very powerful chart, even though you have an undefined, will or heart, which I do as well. You have the energy. The one thing I would say with people with an undefined will or undefined heart, a lot of times they can go really deep into not feeling great. They can have swings. There's a lot of swings, and then the motivation goes, especially because you also have an undefined root, but you have a lot of activation in your undefined root. So it's about taking the time and the rest for yourself and not overdoing it, because as we know, overdoing it overdoes it. Right. And there's a tendency for that can happen at times. And so you being mindful of your rest, and I know you've got a 6-month-old, so that's a thing. It's just like, it's how can you be mindful of that, but making sure that you're getting the rest and you will. And I think you have much more conscious awareness because you have gate 10 activated in multiple spaces in your chart. Gate 10 is all about self-love. So the more that you take care of you, the more you're able to support and serve others.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
Yeah.
This has been so insightful. I love it every time like someone does say something about my chart, because it does give you those like aha moments. And even because I've had a few people read my charts now, it's just kind of like those pokes where it's just like,
yeah,
how many times do you need to hear this, Brittany? You know?
Right. The one last thing I do want to say, and this is very interesting. So we all have an environment in which we thrive. You and I actually have the same environment in which we thrive. And there's markets, kitchens, valleys, shores, mountains. Did I say mountains? There's 6. I can't remember what they all are, but you and I are both mountains, which is interesting because it means we have to create space in between things to like gain perspective. So I live in the mountains. I live in Colorado, and the mountains are like a sanctuary for me. Like I have so much creative flow, so much creative intuition that happens there. I'm passive mountains, which means I'm truly meant to live in the mountains, and like the mountains are a space for me to live. You're active mountains, which actually doesn't necessarily mean that you need to live in in the mountains, but it's more about gaining perspective and creating space, like putting yourself, not like it's not hierarchical, but if you were to live in like a high rise or live live on a higher floor or have an upstairs where you can look down and gain perspective, that will help activate your energy as well, or just being in the mountains in general.
Okay. Yeah. That's interesting. Cause I mean, my office is upstairs. And we have a tall house, like it's 2 floors or whatever with 9-foot ceilings. But, it's interesting because, other than that, like I live in Saskatchewan, it's like the flattest place on earth.
Really? So
it's just like total prairies.
Yeah. So it's important for you to have that elevation. So even if you're going to like work from a hotel or something, or if there's a hotel, like go up a few floors or something, like just being above creates that perspective. People with mountains also too. Like, I don't know if you've ever been to a party or like I used to think about this when all my girlfriends were getting married and I was a bridesmaid, and I would just be like, and I love people. I love being around people. I love like leveraging that energy and stuff. Sometimes though, like if it's continuous, I'm like, okay, I will literally go to the bathroom and I'll just like take a break and I'll like remove myself from the situation and just like breathe for a minute. And that's the mountains environment that's like taking a break. Like it's like creating space from what's happening and to what's going on so that you gain perspective. Does that make sense?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So
Perfect.
Anyway, that was a high level. There's obviously lots of other things, but this was so fun. Thank you so much for having me on. This was so much of a blast.
Thank you. Cause I mean, even, for anyone listening, I think even just hearing the different ways that everything connects is good for anyone listening. Cause they'll be able to say like, oh, well, that's in my chart, and, oh, okay, that's really neat. So, how can people work with you? Because you've done such an amazing job. I mean, I'm sure everyone's like, okay, how can I work with her?
Oh, you're so sweet. Yeah. So you can find me on Instagram. I am Katie Carlson. I'm also on Facebook as Katie Carlson. My website, I'm actually in the process of redoing it, but there's an active site there. It's highenergykc.com.
Awesome. That is amazing. So thank you again so much for being on the podcast. And is there any last like little tidbit that you think that the listeners need?
I would say you are not broken. There's nothing wrong with you. We all have incredible gifts and talents, and we are meant to walk this path with others. We're meant to come together and connect. And so reach out, connect with other people, love yourself. We all have incredible gifts. Even the oftentimes what I see is that it's in our brain, right? Our 2 million-year-old brain that gets us in the way of everything. And when we just recognize that we have the gifts within us to create and shape our reality exactly as our choosing, we are worthy, we are enough. everything can be aligned. And it doesn't mean that you don't have the peaks and valleys. Just realize you're not broken. You are such a beautiful gift. You are worthy. And human design and Gene Keys are such a powerful tool. If you are in that space of a confusion, or you're maybe not attracting the things that you desire most in your life, there's likely some things that need to be contemplated. Mm-hmm. And that's just it. And anything can change in a split second. So it's just bringing awareness to that. And human design and the Gene Keys have done that. And I love working with my clients to do that. So that would be amazing. It.
Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast. And for everyone out there listening, go out there and make life your bitch. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Make Life Your Bitch podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please share it with your bestie. And if you haven't already, subscribe, rate, and review the show on your favorite podcast player. If you have any questions, feedback, or compliments that you want to throw like confetti, you can reach me directly at podcast@makelifeyourbitch.co. Thanks for listening.